Warning, the following is entirely satirical and should not be taken as truth or fact. Styles Rebel Radio and the Rebel Podcast do not own any copyrighted material that may be included in this broadcast. Viewer discretion is advised.
If you go 1 mile east on Columbus Parkway, public park, you'll find kids in a brown car. They were shot with a 9mm Luger. I also killed those kids last year. Goodbye.
Suspend the show right now!
You're gonna zipline directly into the harpoon?
Yeah.
What do you know about planes?
I know a lot about planes.
Buckle in, dude. It's gonna suck.
Put your hand on the screen.
How did they find out? Who was the one?
This show has gotten infinitely more gay.
The mystical land of New Jersey.
I don't understand how the laws in this country work anymore.
Welcome to the Rebel Radio Show. I'm Radio's Rebel DJ Style. On the board is Jules.
Howdy.
And it is October, which means it's spooky season here on WSRR Radio. If you're just joining us, 216-859-8699 is the number to text in. It works all October long, all year long, and for all the shows on WSRR Radio. And we're starting off the year, well, conspiracy year, season,
I'd say.
the conspiracy season with an unsolved murder. It is a conspiracy.
Well, so...
Several unsolved murders.
Yeah. The weirdest part is, like, I'm not sure if this is a conspiracy. It's just,
I'd say it's a conspiracy.
Yeah.
No one knows who killed them.
Well, they know. They just don't know who it is.
That's not how that works. They don't know. That's the whole point of the Zodiac Killer, by the way, is what we're talking about. If you don't know the Zodiac Killer, 1966, technically, 1969, began a murder spree in California, the Vallejo County area, and went uncaught, still uncaught and unnamed to this day. There's only ever been one suspect actually named by the police, and we'll get into that a little bit later on, and nothing's ever stuck. There are 37 alleged kills. 5 of them have been confirmed and linked to the Zodiac Killer. And we're going to figure out who it is today, because I think I know. And I think there's enough evidence now to actually pin it on someone. I don't think they will, but I think there is an answer to who the Zodiac Killer is.
There should be enough evidence now with everything that technology has done in the police world.
So let's go into the breakdown of the Zodiac Killer's kills. Started in December 20th of 1968. These were kills 1 and 2. It was Betty Jensen and David Faraday. They were in, obviously, California, in Benicia, California? Benicia?
I don't know.
That's right.
I'm not from
If you're in California, 216-859-8699. But they went on a date. Passing motorists saw their Ford Rambler parked in a lover's lane spot on Herman Road in Benicia, California. Moments later, another driver noticed the two seemingly lifeless bodies on the side of the road. Betty Lou was found dead with 5 bullet wounds in her back. David was found next to the Rambler with a bullet wound in his head. Now, this is important. Shell casings were recovered at the scene of the crime. The ammunition was identified as Winchester Western Super X copper-coated .22 caliber bullets. The person that ended up finding the bodies initially also reported that he saw a driver leaving the scene of the crime in a gray Chevy sedan, which doesn't get talked about enough, I think. But those are the first 2 confirmed kills, right?
Yes.
Okay, and that was it for those 2.
Yeah, that was it for that year. It was
1968, my bad.
Yeah,
December 20th, 1968. You're right. Then in Vallejo County, July 4th, 1969, 22-year-old Darlene Farron and Michael, I always mess up this name, Majot. Is that it?
I think that's what it said, yeah.
Okay, because it's French. I don't know if he's French, but the last name's French. But on July 4th, 22-year-old Darlene Farron and Michael Mugeot drove her Corvair to the parking lot of Blue Rock Springs Park. Michael, who survived, later told the police another vehicle pulled into the lot behind them around midnight, only to leave and return minutes later. The driver got out of the car, shined a bright light into the eyes of the driver, and fired into the Corvair with a 9mm handgun. At 12:40 p.m., a call later came into the a gas station payphone came in to the Vallejo County Police Department and claimed to be the man responsible for shooting as well as murdering the two, or he claimed he murdered the two, on Lake Herman Road. According to the police, the dispatcher spoke in a low, monotone voice, saying, "I want to report a murder, a double murder. If you go east on Columbus Parkway, you will find kids in a brown car. They were shot with a 9mm Luger. I also killed those 2 kids last year. Goodbye." Darlene died on the way to the hospital, but Michael did end up surviving, and they were unable to find any suspects for this case.
I do want to point out that I think some years later, Michael ended up, he went to the police station and he did a lineup.
Oh, we'll talk a lot more about Michael. Michael is a key factor in the story.
Okay.
He's going to be a recurring character. And you'll notice that this second instance, which is technically his 3rd kill because Michael survived,
Yeah.
as of right now, Michael survived. His technical 3rd kill was Darlene. Also, the only thing Michael reported on during his stay in the hospital was that he saw a white Chevy Impala, was the car he saw leaving the scene. But up till now, these 3 kills, I don't know where I was going with that point, so let's just continue. But Michael's going to be a recurring character in this. July 31st, so that was July 4th. On July 31st, a letter is sent to the Vallejo Times-Herald. The writer claimed to be responsible for the 2 shootings and provide details about the victims, the weapons, the number of shots fired, and the brand of ammunition. On July 31st, that same day, another letter was sent to the San Francisco Chronicle. There were 3 identical letters. They all contained ciphers, which demanded that they publish the cipher in their paper. Now, the cipher is a combination of a bunch of different letters, numbers, and symbols that all spell out. It's essentially like Morse code, but it's almost complete gibberish if you're not actively trying to decipher the cipher. And so I want to talk about that for a second too, because that's the whole gimmick of the Zodiac Killer's the cipher, right? He would always send letters specifically to the Chronicle and the Examiner in San Francisco, and there's one reporter that we'll get to here in a minute that plays a key factor in this too. But he would send these ciphers, and I've seen people try and describe like how you break the cipher, how they're cracked, and I think the first one was cracked by literally just like a couple in town who enjoyed doing crosswords.
Mm-hmm.
But it's based off mathematics. It's not based off like problem solving, like puzzles. So it's based off like equations essentially, which is not how I looked at it. Because at least the first one I looked at how they broke it down. And from what I gather, I could be wrong, 216-859-8699. It's essentially you're taking the value of that letter. So there's 27 letters in the alphabet, 26?
Yeah, I don't know. You put me on the spot there.
Something
I don't
like
want to
that.
mess that
27 or 26, sometimes Y. So 27 letters in the alphabet, right? 1 through 27 are your values.
Okay.
Some alphabets have more, some have less. But roughly, just a rough idea of the cipher. So, I could start my sentence with a dog, right? So I could use A, or I could use 1, or I could use another alphabet's first letter, or I could use the first zodiac sign in the calendar, or I could use the first month of the year broken down into something else. So it's just assigning values to
symbols?
The letters.
Okay.
Because to my knowledge, you'd based off of our alphabet to decipher it. So you'd go 1 through 27, and then in that 27 pick out different letters, variables, symbols, and numbers that align to that spacing. That's how I kind of wrapped my head around it. Again, I could be wrong.
Honestly, I just stared at the cipher and then moved on.
But that was the second letter. There were 3. Another one was sent to the San Francisco Examiner. The writer threatened to kill again if the newspaper did not publish their portion of the cipher, which also included at the bottom of it a tagline that was deciphered to say, "I like killing people because it's so much fun." Now, it's important to notice the Examiner did not post their part of the cipher. The other 2 publications, the Herald and the Chronicle, posted the cipher in their following edition, and the Examiner did not. They actually sent a reply out saying that they wanted further proof that this is the person who killed these 3 teenagers, or well, I guess one was 22, these 3 people. And they wanted more proof of it. They didn't think it was enough that, they gave the amount of shots, the ammunition, the breakdown for it. So in a response, they received a letter on August 4th from the Zodiac Killer, saying that he committed the murders, he gave them more information, and he used the name Zodiac for the first time. And this is important because now that we have this alias of the Zodiac Killer, it gets linked back to a case from 1966. And in 1966, I believe it was in Riverside, California, where Sherry Bates was found on October 30th, 1966. Her Volkswagen Beetle was abandoned in a library parking lot. Her body was found nearby between two houses. She had been stabbed several times in the throat, and her throat was slashed. There were no suspects found in this. There was no one linked to this, and for years it went cold until this letter came in 1969 with the title Zodiac. And the only correlation they had between this killing in 1969 and the string of murders from the Zodiac Killer at this point was the fact that the only things found on the crime scene in Riverside in 1966 were a military boot, a naval designed boot, standard issue, and they found a watch that was from the Swiss brand Zodiac, or was the name of the watch was the Zodiac. And that's the only correlation they have. There will be more correlation to that later, but that's where that kind of starts getting pieced together. So we move on from the three murders that we have now, the one that's possibly linked back in 1966, and we move to September 27th, 1969. This is Brian Hartnell and Cecilia Shepard. A man appeared holding a gun, wearing a hooded costume with a white cross circle stitched over his chest. He explained that he had escaped from prison and he had money in a car to escape to Mexico. Then, without warning, he pulled out a large knife and stuck it into Brian's back 6 times. He then stabbed Cecilia 10 times, and as she fought for her life, the man walked into Brian's car, used a pen to draw a cross and circle on the door with the dates and locations of the previous attacks. Then September 27th, 69, 6:30 p.m. by knife. At 7:40, a man called Napa Direct Police Department from the scene of the crime and confessed. He said, "I am the one who did it." Police traced the call to a payphone near a car wash in Napa. Celine died 2 days later from her injuries. Brian did end up surviving. Brian also went on to describe that he saw a silver blue 2-door Chevy leave the scene of the crime. This is something I don't think anyone talks about when they go into this, and I had to do a bit of research to find these details, because there are witnesses, not to the murders, but that show up relatively quickly after for all of these cases.
Yeah, for the first one, it was, or not the first one, the second one with
Yes,
Michael.
Yes.
3 teenagers on bikes just drove on in there.
Yep. There was also a detective that showed up 5 minutes later.
Mm-hmm.
So like people were on the scene quick for a lot of these, and some of them were in public that we'll get to here. But there were typically a lot of people in close proximity that found the bodies relatively quickly, with exception to the 1966 one, which was overnight. But the problem is, because there's so many people at these scenes, the scene of the crime or in proximity, you'd think someone would have some kind of visual on what this guy looked like, or some make or model of a vehicle, or some account of where they were. And so I went back and looked at that, and I wanted to specify on the cars, because that is something that people have in their records and in their interviews after that doesn't get talked about. So we have a Impala, we have a blue silver 2-door Chevy, we had a gray Impala, and now we go to October 11th, 1969. This is Paul Stein. He's a cab driver in San Francisco. Stein picked up fare headed for destination upscale Pasidrio Heights. Again, not from California. 216-859-8699. At an intersection of Washington and Cherry Street, the passenger shot Stein in the head and removed a piece of his shirt. The man walked away just before the police arrived. The police radio broadcast mistakenly saying that the suspect was a black man. Officers passing dismissed a man resembling the correct description who was white. Fingerprints found on the driver's side of the cab may have belonged to the killer, and a sketch was produced based on description by witnesses. The case was considered a routine robbery until the San Francisco Chronicle received an envelope with a letter from the Zodiac with the words beginning, "I am the murderer of the taxi driver." The envelope also included a blood-stained piece of Paul Stein's shirt. The Zodiac denied that he left any fingerprints and then mocked the police for failing to catch him on his walk out. This is a crazy one, because this one was in public. It was reported by this one was 3 teenagers, wasn't it?
I thought it was.
I think the cab driver was 3 teenagers because they initially reported the cab driver being stabbed, which was actually mistaken for him cutting off pieces of the shirt. But this is in public. The guy's driving a cab. The Zodiac Killer shoots him and then walks away and walks through all these people. And because the description was sent wrong over the police dispatch, the guy got away. There's even accounts that the Zodiac Killer was stopped by police and asked what happened and then continued walking.
I'd see that. And then, especially because he mocked him in his letter, mocked the police in his letter.
Yeah, so that happened October 11th, 69. October 13th is when the letter showed up at the Chronicle.
And this, correct me if I'm wrong, is the last actual proven Zodiac Killer death, right?
There is 1 or 2 more that we'll get to when we come back. 216-859-8699 is the number to text in. You're listening to the Rebel Radio Show on WSRR Radio.
Hey everyone, Shaney here, the host of that show, Off Air. Check me out 3 p.m. weekdays on WSRR, Styles Rebel Radio.
Imagine spending hundreds of dollars of your own money to advertise a massive corporation. Now imagine that same corporation using your money to pay a public figure to sell a product back to you. Unfortunately, you don't have to imagine. Corporate product placement is the monopoly of the clothing industry as we know it. That's where GenericClothes.com comes in. Stick it to these big brand clothing cunts by wearing something straight and to the point. GenericClothes.com's got you covered and lets you have a laugh at their expense. Nobody cares about the details. Get to the point. With shirts like floral pattern, trademark logo, music band, and more. Once again, that's GenericClothes.com.
Hi, this is Melissa.
And hey, it's Matt.
Coming at you from Synergy Music Studio.
We are a recording and production studio located on the south side near Chicago.
Check us out online at synergymusicstudio.com. We offer recording, mixing, and mastering.
And follow us on Instagram at Synergy Music Studio. Rock hard.
Whoever's the owner of the gray sedan, you left the Rebel Radio Show playing.
Welcome back to the Rebel Radio Show on WSRR Radio. We're brought to you by Synergy Music Studio out of Chicago. Check out all of their awesome services, synergymusicstudio.com. It is October. We're starting off conspiracy season with the mystery of who is the Zodiac Killer, and I'm confident that I have an answer to that by the end of today's show. But we're in 72 right now, getting into the 70s?
Yes.
Getting into the 70s right now, and we have covered the almost connection to the 1966 murder of Sherry Bates. We don't have a solid alibi yet if that is linked to the Zodiac Killer. We have covered my notes are out of order. Well, this is great. We've covered Vallejo County.
Yeah.
We've covered Benicia. I think it's Benicia. I'm going to go with Benicia. We've covered Benicia. That's Betty Jensen and David Faraday. Then Vallejo County is 22-year-old Darlene Farron, and then Mike, who survived. So we've got 3, maybe 4 on our hands right now. We just talked about the cab driver from October 11th, 1969. That takes it up to 4, maybe 5 confirmed kills for the Zodiac Killer. We discussed that on October 13th, just 2 days after the murder of Paul Stein, the cab driver. The Chronicle received a letter mocking the police, along with a piece of Paul Stein's bloody shirt from the scene. And this is kind of where it gets interesting because you have varying reports come in at this time. So that's October 11th, 1969, right?
Yes.
Okay. So then we move on to a possible Zodiac attack at this point. This is March 1970. And this is 22-year-old Kathleen Johns. She's a pregnant woman. She has her infant daughter with her. She gets in her station wagon to leave San Bernardino, California to visit her mother. While she's on Highway 132, a motorist pulls alongside her, and the driver signals that she needs to pull over. When she does pull over, the driver explains that the back wheel of the back wheel of Kathleen's station wagon was loose. He promised he'd fix the problem. Instead, he loosened the lug nuts and the wheel fell off as Kathleen began to drive away. The man then offered to give Kathleen a ride to the gas station. She climbed into the car and discovered he appeared to have other plans. Eventually, Kathleen grabbed her daughter and jumped from the car. She went to the police station. She identified the stranger from a police sketch on the wall of the Zodiac Killer that was given by Mike. So Mike gives his account of the Zodiac Killer, and I can look actually what he says. He describes the killer as 5'8", between 195 and 200 pounds, with curly light brown to blonde hair. And the police have this sketch hanging up at...
No glasses.
No glasses on that one. She finds the sketch hanging at the police station and says, "That's the man who tried to abduct me." She also says that he had a light-colored vehicle. So this is a possible link to the Zodiac Killer. Obviously, she didn't die, but it was an attempted kidnapping. And again, this is a possible link. This isn't a confirmed one yet. But this is March of 1970 and April 20th of 1970, a 13-symbol cipher and a diagram of a bomb designed to kill children on a school bus from the Zodiac Killer is sent to the Chronicle. And the Zodiac Killer also, I think this is an interesting point that gets looked over a lot. The Zodiac Killer denied responsibility for a recent police station bombing that killed an officer. So I know there's a lot of theories that float around saying, oh, there's 37 kills this guy claims to have, but only 5 of them were ever confirmed. He was just taking account for other murders in the area, and he's really not as big of a serial killer as he wanted to be. I think this disproves that theory right there.
Because he didn't take credit.
He's saying, hey, people are saying that I was the one bombing the police station. That wasn't me. I don't know if I can say that if they're going to take me off YouTube for saying those couple words I just said. So if we're still on air, 216-859-8699, let me know. That was April 20th. 8 days later, the Chronicle gets a postcard from the Zodiac Killer demanding the publication of his bomb threats and insists that the people of the San Francisco Bay Area start wearing Zodiac pins that show his logo on it, which is the circle and the cross. 6 days later, month later, 2 months later, April to June, 2 months later, the Chronicle got another postcard containing a map of the San Francisco Bay Area and a circle of the peak of Mount Diablo with a code located to the Zodiac's bomb. He also claimed that he killed again. On July 24th, a month later, the Zodiac Killer sent another postcard to the Chronicle complaining that people weren't wearing the Zodiac buttons. He then claimed that he was also responsible for the failed abduction of pregnant mother Kathleen Johns on March 22nd, 1970. So he is claiming that was him that abducted Kathleen, that she saw his photo on the police sketch in the department there, and that was a Zodiac. And you can't say it was a kill, but that was a Zodiac Killer interaction. Chronicle reporter Paul Avery, who is the main reporter for the Chronicle and the Zodiac postings, and there's going to be a little more on him here too, receives a letter detailing a 1966 murder case from the Zodiac. This is the 1966 case where they found the watch. It would be the first confirmed kill in a timeline. So the Zodiac is now saying, hey, to Paul Avery specifically, the writer, that was me, by the way. I killed the lady in 1966. On July 26th, 2 days after that letter, 1970, the Zodiac describes torturing his victims and makes a quote from a musical that, again, gets sent to the Chronicle. He has a favorite publication, at least, you know? Yeah. It's crazy how much 3, but really the Chronicle, played a part in the Zodiac Killer.
I was thinking about that. Like, why would they post any of this? Why wouldn't they just
I'm sure they did great business.
Why wouldn't they just take what was given to them and give it to the police? I understand that the Zodiac Killer was like threatening to kill more, but he was still going to kill more regardless.
I mean, maybe. That's the risk you take, right? And the Chronicle, I believe, is the one. I'm sorry, the Examiner was the one that said, "Hey, we need more evidence. We're not going to post the cipher," and then he sent them more. So I don't know. Maybe he wanted them to call his bluff. Maybe he didn't. But we move on to the next possible Zodiac case here now. A postcard attributed to the Zodiac featured an advertisement for a condominium project in Lake Tahoe, Nevada. This is the first time we're seeing something out of state. The phrases "past Lake Tahoe areas" and "sought victim 12" are interpreted. A cryptic message alludes to the disappearance of 25-year-old Donna Lass. In May of 1970, Donna worked for the San Francisco Letterman General Hospital, located near the Paris. This is another one, right? Presidio military base. Maybe. I think it's a Navy base. Near the area where the Zodiac Killer killed the cab driver. Donna then moved northeast to South Lake Tahoe and found work as a nurse at the Sahara Hotel and Casino. On September 6th, 1970, Donna vanished after her last work entry of 1:50 a.m. Her car was later found abandoned in her apartment. According to some accounts, an unidentified man called Donna's employer and her landlord, claiming that she had to leave town due to a family emergency. Donna's family told the authorities that there was no such emergency, and they had never identified the man. Investigators suspected that Donna had been abducted and killed. The body was never found. Her disappearance remained a mystery until her name was added to the long list of possible Zodiac victims with that last letter. Another suspected Zodiac postcard was sent on October 5th, 1970, with context clipped from other sources, much like you'd see the stereotypical ransom letter where they're crippling out letters. The word said, "The pace isn't any slower. In fact, it's just one big," was what was clipped out of there. On Halloween, a card was sent to the Chronicle reporter Paul Avery again. This is, days before Halloween. This is October 27th, 1970. He also continuously misspells Avery as Averly. There's also a few other words he misspells, and I want to get into that when we get to the suspects. But he also misspelled the number 14, and he references an unidentified 14th victim at this point. So when we had Donna at Lake Tahoe, that was 12, somewhere between May 1970 to October 30th, 1970. He has killed two more that are unidentified. On March 13th, 1971, in a letter to the Los Angeles Times, the Zodiac suggests that he was also responsible for the unsolved murder of Sherry Jo Bates. This is the 1966 murder. This is the first time that we have a concrete confirmation from the Zodiac Killer that he was responsible for that 1966 murder, where they found the imprint of the military-issue boot, where they found the Swiss-made Zodiac watch. I believe with that, too, there's also letters that are found in that 1966 murder that aren't ciphers, that are, one was sent on a typewriter and two others were handwritten poems, and poems specifically I'll touch on later as well. And we just did Donna Lass, right? Paul Avery. I guess we'll pick it up when we come back. 216-859-8699. We're going to crack the Zodiac Killer when we come back.
The Artificial Intelligence Podcast is the only show written, voiced, and scored entirely by AI. All episodes are available now on stylesrebelradio.com.
Hey, Style here, and I want to take a minute to talk to you about Hellbender Vinyl, a proud supporter of local and independent music and a proud supporter of WSRR Radio. Hellbender Vinyl is one of America's most trusted custom vinyl pressing plants. Located in Upper Lawrenceville on Butler Street, Hellbender is Pittsburgh's first and only vinyl record pressing plant and is here to help local bands and artists get their albums onto vinyl. Hellbender Vinyl offers vinyl record pressings to ensure that albums don't just end up as a bunch of ones and zeros floating around somewhere on the internet. So, if you're interested in giving your album a physical release, you can visit hellbendervinyl.com to start the conversation today. Plus, every customer at Hellbender Vinyl receives 5 free test presses to review at no additional cost. Hellbent on quality, hellbent on service, hellbendervinyl.com.
Styles Rebel Radio. Read the sign. 15 for dudes, girls get in free past 7.
It's October. We're solving the Zodiac Killer case in this segment. We're up to 1971 now. We have 14 alleged kills from the Zodiac Killer. 5 have already been confirmed, and that's where it's going to stay. Still, till current day, we only have 5 confirmed kills of an alleged 37, I believe, is the number he says. But we have, this is where it gets interesting, 1971 till like 1974, 75-ish. There starts to become letters and reports and postcards and stuff sent to all these different publications that aren't the Zodiac Killer. And there's a lot of people claiming, different murders or going back to previous murders and giving false information about it. So it's a really weird 4 or 5 year span here where it's people trying to take credit for the Zodiac Killer murders or claim to be the Zodiac Killer or someone they know is the Zodiac Killer. So there's a bunch of false reports during this time, but there's one more that I want to point to before we get to actually breaking down who is the Zodiac Killer, and it's a letter to the Chronicle. This is 1974, January 29th, and it alluded to possible suicide note, and it alludes to the same musical that was referenced before in the note to Paul Avery, but the note mentioned me, 37, SFPD 0, and it was interpreted as a box score indicating that there were 37 victims in total. To me, that is the last Zodiac Killer note. There's a few more here in May, February, and July of 1964, but they're different style notes. They're cutouts. They're letters with quotes from the Red Phantom, and that they have different names they're going by now. To me, 1974, January 29th, the box score is the last record we have of the Zodiac Killer. So let's get into description of the Zodiac Killer. Oftentimes depicted in glasses, varying accounts of how he looks, but a general idea. And there's one instance of him wearing this executioner's hood with the Zodiac symbol, which I think is a really weird one-off. You'd think the rest of them, he would be in this outfit. It's like the 3rd or 4th kill, and he busts out the executioner outfit, kills 2 people by knife, kills 1 person by knife and 1 survives.
Yeah.
And then the outfit's never seen or mentioned from again.
Was that also the only stabbing?
No, because the 1966 one was a stabbing.
Right, that was...
At that point, that had been the only stabbing, but the 1966 one got added.
I was very interested in... Usually with serial killers, they have a tell. There's one thing or a couple of things that they do the same with every murder.
Oh, there's a tell.
But I think it's crazy that he switched up almost everything that he did every time.
It's like he learned from his mistakes.
He used a knife, a 22, a 9mm, another knife.
Yeah. Now, the 22 is a recurring one, but the 9mm is interesting because Mike is the one who verifies there was a 9mm, or the call during the murder with Mike involved in it. He admits to using a 9mm, which is very interesting because it seems like, from my research, the rest of the shootings were 22, and that's why the casings, the caliber, and the make and model of the gun were so important. I want to go over the witness accounts real quick. Michael Majot says he's 5'8", between 195 and 200, with curly light brown to blue hair, or curly light brown to blonde hair, drove a silver blue sedan. Brian Hartnell, the other man that survived, says he's 5'8" to 10", anywhere between 225 and 250. He said his age was between 20 and 30, and he had dark brown hair. The hair, other than style, the hair color is a non-factor to me because it's night during most of these killings.
Yeah.
I think that's an easily dismissed one. Cecilia Shepard, the woman who was abducted and noticed the killer's picture the sketch of the Zodiac Killer at the police station, claims he's 5'11" with dark brown hair. Brian and Cecilia's witness says he was 6 foot tall, 200 to 225. He said he's 28 to 40 with black hair. A teenager during the cab murder described him to the police as 5'8" with a heavy build. He was in his early 40s with a crew cut that was reddish blonde. And then the cop that reported during the cab driver murder claims he was 5'10", 35 to 45 with a crew cut. It's often said that he wears glasses. Almost every instance, other than Mike's, was it Mike's that didn't mention glasses? Navy issue boots were found during the kill he admitted to in 1966. And many killings happened during and around holidays, which is an interesting point that I want to put out too.
Yeah, because July 4th,
Christmas, couple on Halloween or near Halloween, near New Year's. Yeah, so a lot of these happened during and around holidays. And then I guess the only other thing I want to tack onto this is, again, the make and model of the car. We have a Chevy, we have an Impala, Chevy Impala. But we have some people describing specifically Impala. We have some describing Chevy. We have anywhere ranging from gray, light gray, white, and blue as the color of this car. And I'll come back to that in a second. But we're gonna get into the suspects here in the last 20 minutes, and we're gonna solve the Zodiac Killer. I think we are.
You think so?
I think I know who it is.
Ted Cruz.
Ted Cruz, the Zodiac Killer, guys. We got him. Go get him. Go get him, boys. I don't know why you said Ted Cruz, and I thought about Ted Kaczynski. I'm like, the Unabomber? I don't think the Unabomber is the Zodiac Killer.
He was somebody that they thought would be.
The Unabomber?
Yeah, they talked about Ted
Kaczynski.
The Unabomber. Possibly.
We're saying bomb a lot of times on the radio right now, just saying. Lawrence Kane is the first suspect. He was picked out of a lineup by Kathleen Johns, the woman who was abducted. I said that name wrong earlier. Kathleen Johns is the woman who was abducted. He was age 45, or I'm sorry, he was age 45 in 1969. The handwriting test came back a match. Kane traded in his car 5 days after Darlene Ferrin was killed in 1969. That's the one that Mike survived. He traded in his car 5 days after she was killed to a brown sedan rather than his blue sedan. Kane lived less than a mile from where Kathleen was picked up. He also worked at the same hotel as Donna Lass when she went missing.
Oh.
What do you think about Lawrence Kane?
He's not one of my top suspects.
He's not one of your top suspects? Well, he was the first suspect.
Yes.
Jack Terrence was then suspected in 2007. This is the one that holds the least weight to me.
I agree.
Jack Terrence was suspected in 2007 when his stepson reported that he might be the Zodiac Killer. He provided an old bloody knife, a roll of disturbing photographs from his father, and a black hood that seemingly matched the executioner's hood. They had similar handwriting on the test. He would have been 41 in 1969. He was also in the Navy and Air Force in that area. There's some coincidences. I don't think this is enough at all. It's weird that there's an old bloody knife.
Yeah.
That's a weird thing to have in general. And also, the executioner's hood's all well and good, but it's very, like, the whole thing about it that it had the Zodiac logo on it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think Jack Terrence gets a pass. The top suspect, and the only suspect ever suspected by the police, is Arthur Lee Allen. And there's a bunch on Arthur Lee Allen. You might have more than I do on here. But he was suspected when a friend alerted the police about discussions between himself and Allen of killing couples, taunting the police, using makeup as a disguise, using flashlights to blind victims. He would use the symbol along with other watches. He would use the symbol that was on his watch as a calling, which again is a callback to the 1966 Zodiac Swiss watch that was found. He was in Riverside during the Bates murders and was absent from work 2 days following the Bates murders. He owned the same typewriter, the same .22 caliber. He spelled Christmas the same way that the Zodiac Killer incorrectly spelled Christmas with 2 S's. He claimed that he killed a cab driver to his friend once.
Mm-hmm.
I have 2 pages on Arthur here. I'm sorry, Alan. Alan Lee? right? Arthur Lee Allen. Okay.
Arthur Lee Allen.
Sorry.
There you go.
He was 36 in 1969. He drove a white Ford and a brown Chevy. He was in the Navy. He was 6 foot tall. He had a crush on a waitress, Darlene, at his work. Michael, I'm going to fuck up his last name. Mojo.
Yeah.
Michael Mageau would identify him in a lineup as the man who shot him. No DNA was ever matched. He did not wear glasses, and the handwriting was never a match. Are the three things that work against Arthur Lee Allen. Is this your guy?
He is one of my top 2. I've been going back and forth, but there is a lot of weird stuff with Allen, because most of the police, like detectives, have basically said that it's not circumstantial evidence. He was, I believe, the attack in September. Can't remember, but he had stated he was scuba diving somewhere farther away, and he wouldn't have even been in the same vicinity.
I'll say there's a lot of coincidences when it comes to Arthur Lee Allen.
Yes.
Lee was another thing that was brought up, is the fact that he went by his middle name, and I think 2 different suspects referenced a Lee, and then the sister of one of the women that was murdered, remember her sister talking about a man with a short common name, and if he went by Lee, it fits that bill. The interesting part is most of the information we know about Lee comes from a friend who turned him in, saying all these specific things, and it's one thing if he would have done this during the murders, but he did it after all of them, when all of this is public knowledge. So, I don't know what his vendetta was against Lee, but it seems like a lot that he's like, hey, this guy he explained to me that he would kill people, he would kill couples. He explained to me that he would use a flashlight to blind them and use makeup as a disguise, and that he, had all these different things that were common after the fact. And I think the only thing credible with the friend's account is the fact that he spelled Christmas wrong. He owned the same typewriter and the same 22.
He also had a Zodiac watch.
Did he?
Yes.
Okay.
He had a Zodiac Seawolf wrist watch, which had the same logo as the Zodiac Killer.
He did also drive a white Ford.
Yes.
A white blue Ford specifically, which is the exact car that Michael says that he saw at the scene of the crime.
Speaking of Michael, in July 1992, Michael identified Allen as the man who shot him in 1969 from a photo lineup.
Yes.
However, most of the police during that investigation basically said that it wouldn't have been him, because at the time he was 100 pounds heavier than the man that Michael saw. His face was too round, and he was taller than the man that Michael saw.
He is the tallest suspect. He is 6 foot tall. And again, all of the accounts put him somewhere between 5'8" and 5'10", with exception to one.
I guess 5'8", 5'10" could be mistaken as 6 foot.
Which I guess, that's a very, and I think about the same thing with weight. It's like, I've never looked at a person and be like, oh, he's 225. That's not something I've ever thought in my life. So that's a weird one to identify.
And weight could be held very differently too. So somebody could be 200 pounds but look 100.
Well, yeah, and if you're 6 foot, you're gonna typically weigh more than someone who's 5'8".
The distribution's gonna be in your favor.
Right, but that's not always true.
Yeah.
I want to get to my guy, and I want to know if he's someone that's on your list.
Okay.
Richard Hoffman?
No.
Ooh, do you have someone else?
I have. Where is
Hit
he?
me with yours first, because I've got 2 sheets of Richard Hoffman.
Richard Gaikowski.
Okay, hit me with him.
So he, at the time of the murders, he was a reporter and editor at Good Times, the Martinez Morning News Gazette. So he was in the Bay Area from 1963 to 1971, and he went to Stein's funeral.
Okay.
He showed up at actually a couple of the murders, or not murders, victims' funerals.
Mm-hmm.
He is the most look-alike to the composite sketch, in my beliefs. There's a word in one of the Zodiac ciphers that is Gyke, Gyke,
Okay.
which is Gilkowski's nickname.
Okay.
And he was well known to his peers by Gyke. So once that came out, more people started thinking it was him. He was let's see. The FBI investigated him. They dismissed him because he told them he was out of the country.
So I'm gonna throw mine in here now. Unless you have more to add.
I have one more thing. So in 1971, he was involuntarily committed to the Napa County Mental Hospital and diagnosed with mental illness, which I think is a key component in the murdery vibe.
Let me give you the backstory on Richard Hoffman here because we got 5 minutes. Richard Hoffman is a suspect as of September 2024.
Oh.
A month ago. To my knowledge, that's the video I watched. His grandson gave an interview where he says that he has enough evidence to say that his grandfather, Richard Hoffman's the Zodiac Killer. He collaborated with Mike Mojo. Watch Mojo. He collaborated with Mike Mojo to go over this information if it fits the bill. Mike agrees to all of this cooperation. He says that it's very likely that Richard Hoffman is the man that shot him. His grandfather was a cop for 10 years. His grandfather, Richard Hoffman, was the detective for the Valero County Police Department. He was also en route the night that the murder with Mike happened.
Was he the one that showed up?
He radioed 5 minutes before the murder happened on the road. He was the first person on the scene. He admits to moving the bodies to chalk the outline, which would account for his fingerprints being on the scene and not being overlooked. Hang on, let me keep going. We got 4 minutes. He has glasses. He wears a high and tight hair. He has brown hair. Hoffman had an affinity for holidays, his grandson states, saying that he would always go over the top when it came to Christmas, New Year's, Halloween, and similar holidays. The words on Hoffman's police reports were often misspelled in the same way the Zodiacs were. Things like Christmas, 14, often occurred as misspellings in Hoffman's police reports. He was on the set for the 2007 Zodiac film as a police inquirer. He was a Navy member stationed at the Valero base. He had a poem found in 1966 for Sherry Bates was signed R.H. Hoffman was on patrol the night that he had the Valero murders happened. The Valero murder happened 5 minutes before. Mike was blinded by a flashlight, so he wouldn't have recognized the face entirely. Hoffman was the first cop on the scene amidst moving the bodies. Mike also remembers Darlene mentioning the name Richard. I think Richard Hoffman is the most likely case.
Well,
he was also moved
good.
up to head detective following these murders.
Interesting. I wonder if he had more information regarding the murders and it was like...
I thought I had another sheet here on Hoffman, but there's also... He loved math and equation solving is part of the breakdown that his grandson gives. He would often work on mathematics for fun in his free time because he was so bad at spelling. He used math to express a lot of statements, which goes perfectly in line with the ciphers. He was also a carpenter in his free time. They couldn't find the Zodiac's fingerprints on multiple cases due to them being covered in wood glue. And it masks the fingerprints from the Zodiac Killer. I think Richard Hoffman is the Zodiac Killer. I think all of it lines up. I think him being the head detective for the Valero County Police Department during the time of this happening is too perfect. The fact that he's writing his own police reports, the fact that he admits to moving the bodies that were found before anyone else got there, puts his fingerprints on there and no one's going to question it. I think it's all there. The fact that the initial letter that was along with the typewriter letter for the 1966 murder was initialed RH, I think it's there.
I wonder if he was working with someone. Because I've seen multiple theories where it's like the Zodiac Killer was a person, but he was having other people write his letters, or he...
I don't think so. I don't believe in the multiple killer theory.
Really?
I really don't.
I still like Galecki, because or Gilkowski. My apologies. Gilkowski, the Nancy Slover was the Valero police dispatcher. She had heard voice recordings of Gilkowski and said that is the Zodiac Killer.
I do want to point out, too, because I know we have to do a break, I want to point out, too, in closing, that the night that Mike was shot, as the woman with him was killed, it was a brown Chevy or something along those lines that he says pulls up behind him. He's a detective in an unmarked car. He pulls up behind him in the style a police car would pull up behind. It's not straight back behind him. It's back and to the right, so the light is shining into the car, and he can get a make of who's there. There's also an account of Richard Hoffman's report detailing how Mike was positioned before he arrived, which wouldn't make sense if Mike was dead when he arrived, because he's responding to a call.
Well, Mike wasn't.
Well, Mike was on the ground outside of the car.
Yeah.
But in his police report, he states how Mike was sitting in the car prior to him arriving, which doesn't make any sense unless he was there prior to the killing.
Yeah, because...
Which Mike says the killer, the Zodiac Killer, showed up, left, and came back and killed.
Yeah, because he had showed up, he shot both of them, Mike was hit in the arm.
No, the Zodiac Killer showed up and left before he fired a shot that first time. Then he came back and with the flashlight killed them both. Or killed the woman and wounded Mike and thought he was dead.
He had shot Mike once first.
Right, and came back and shot him again.
Then came back and shot him
But he didn't leave
times.
the scene. He just walked back to the car and shot him.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And Michael had made like a note saying that he couldn't get out of the car because the passenger seat handle was broken. So he was struggling to even get out of the car when he was shot the additional 3 times.
I think with everything that's there, between the spelling, between the fact that he was in the area, he was in the Navy, he was on the scene, he was writing the reports, he has the same misspelling, he gave an account of how the people were sitting in the car prior to him being there, I think Richard Hoffman is the Zodiac Killer.
I mean, it makes the most sense for the police, the leader of the investigation, to be the killer.
Will we ever get an answer to that? Probably not. I know this is a big story trending right now, which coincidentally just happened as we were doing this. But I think Richard Hoffman's the Zodiac Killer, and I want to know what you think. 216-859-8699.
216-859-8699.
One more.
216-859-8699.
That's right. That's the Rebel Hotline that works for all of our shows, like the Rebel Radio Show live every Monday, right here on WSRR Radio. We're saving the underground music scene, supporting local music, so we're nationally local, playing your local bands worldwide. Again, the Rebel Radio Show, 5 p.m. every Monday. And you get Rebel Recast during the week at 5 p.m. You can check out all of our programming, showtime, schedule, and more at WSRRradio.com. During the whole month of October, we are covering conspiracy theories. If you want the full list or to chat with us in more detail, you can go to the Discord server at WSRRadio.com and join us there. There's a whole bunch of different channels for conspiracies, each show, memes, Spider-Man, Marvel, wrestling, and a whole bunch of other stuff, including you can chat with the artists that you hear right here on WSRR. You can listen on the Live 365 app on the website, and you can use that text line for any and all of our shows. Again, that's 216-859-8699. We're brought to you by Synergy Music Studio out of Chicago. Make sure you check them out at synergymusicstudio.com. Genericlothes.com. Tell them the big brand clothing companies they can all suck it and get straight to the point. And we're brought to you by Hellbender Vinyl, Pittsburgh's first and only vinyl record pressing plant and one of America's most trusted vinyl record pressing plants. So to make your album release something special and put it on some bright colored pretty vinyl, go to hellbendervinyl.com because they're hellbent on quality and they're hellbent on service at Hellbender Vinyl. This comes out Wednesdays at 10 on all major streaming platforms as the Rebel Podcast. And until next time, I've been Radio's Rebel DJ Style. That's Jules.
Bye.
Until next time, peace.
My life has changed, the fields are rich when I know